Hey guys, thanks for showing up today to see some more videos. RLR, we're trying to make it fun to drive. Today we're going to talk about IRS Rear Suspension and how to install pivots. We're going to show a few things and then we're going to have some more content on later videos. But right now what I want to show you some of the components that we have that we've made available, because quite frankly a lot of the stuff that's out there is just subpar. It comes from you know where and it's just for the most part junk. So you know, we try to make stuff that's nice, and we want to make stuff that if we were installing it in our car, that's how it would be. For the longest time, people ran swing axle transmissions, and that worked great for a lot of years. But now we've seen that everybody wants to go to IRS. We started that about 5-6 years ago, and looks like IRS is here to stay. Now that doesn't mean Internal Revenue Service. I know that's a scary thought. It means independent rear suspension, and Volkswagen changed that from swing axle to IRS because it is a more stable system to run on. So let's get into some of the pieces that we have here, and I'll hold them up so you can see them. So first of all, these would be the pivots that you would weld in. So you would have these pivots, left pivot, right pivot. So these were the ones that you would put and cut and carve and work into your pan. And in order to get them into the pan in the right section, you would need a fixture, you need to fabricate, you need to weld and stuff like that. But they make these, like I said, in a cheap version, and you just don't want to use them. So we have these are USA made, real deal thick pivots. I don't know if you can see, but they're like 3/16 thick. They're pretty grande. So anyways, so you have that deal right there. So these are the pivots, we sell these. The pivot bolts, you can kind of only get these from one place, so we have to use these, but the quality is pretty okay, and we use these pivots. We have these on our website as well. And then as well, the pivot washers, the 2 per side for each of the bushings. You can see that in one of our videos that we're going to be showing some of those other components later on. And then there's the pivots. So like in a normal sense, we have a pivot that you'd put in the inner pivot with a stock width deal. So a regular pivot. So you basically put that in there, and then you put the bolt in, and then you put this up to the torsion housing, and I'll show that in a minute, where you just kind of basically cut this thing in there and weld it to the torsion tube. So all our kits come with instructions. We try to do the best we can to make sure that you know how to do it. If you're going to be doing it at home, that's what kits are for. You can see this little bugger here. This is our 3-inch, a brand new 3-inch narrowed version. So you can see the difference between the two. This is for standard width. This is for when we narrow this suspension 3 inches per side. So we didn't previously have these. We just came up with these at the behest of one of my good buddies here now in Boise, Idaho. And he compelled me, he said, "Ron, why don't you have these?" And I said, "Well, I always just did it this way." He's all, not such a good idea. Maybe you should just make these, and then who knows, maybe even a rental program later on. You know who you are. I'll give you full credit when the time comes. But either way, so I am going to tap out of this video. Then we're going to switch over and have the torsion housing up here so I can show you more of the practical application. All right, we're back with just a little bit of a tune-up on how this goes. So basically, if this is the pivot that you purchased from RLR and you want to install it, you're going to cut it into the pan. So you can look at the pan when we're doing this deal, and I'll move my camera view down so you can kind of see what's happening. Now remember, this pan section here is an already back half portion of an IRS pan. So if you can begin to imagine if this was a swing axle and we were cutting this in and using these fixtures, in a later video, not this one, but in a later one, I'll show you what it means and how we're going to actually cut it in so that you can get the full explanation. But there's a lot of folks that I sell these to. I sell literally hundreds of these, and people are doing it all the time. So this was just going to be like a brush up for some of you guys. So anyways, so you have your pivot bolt, your pivot washers, and then you have your pivot. And remember, like I had showed you, this goes in here, and this is what gets welded in the center to set all your pivot angles in your camber. So if you want to look down here on this deal here, so this is the pivot section, and it's labeled left, or what would be the drivers. And so you would put the pivot and the pivot bolt on here. So let's just do that real quick. So let's put this right here, and then put this on here, and then we're going to screw this in here. And I got a handy dandy little socket here that is made just for that. You can see it's kind of got a hex thing on there for doing this. So you can put that in there like that, And let me back it off just a little bit so it can actually move. There we go. So you see this pivot's on here now, and there's no lash, it's at 0. So then you basically would put this on your housing and put this in, and then you would put the bolts in right here and bolt this into the housing. And then this right here is the stock housing, and you could see how the new housing would basically be put in there in lieu of the stock housing. So it's actually a pretty straightforward setup, but if you don't have the fixtures to do it right, you could weld that in the wrong spot or the wrong place, and buddy, you're gonna be having trouble. You'll never get this car aligned. But if you do it right and you get the pivots welded in there, when you get it all done, it's sweet. And then the suspension is at the right angle, the camber, all those things, the toe, everything's just cherry, so you can actually have a car that rides really nice and really straight. So in a later video, like I said, we'll catch up and we'll actually do the cut-in on a standard setup so you can actually see the amount of work that goes into it. But just know that you can get the pivots, you can get the washers, you can get the bolts, you can get the pivot fixtures, and even when, like I said, when we narrow the rear suspension on the cars for the racing, 3 inches per side, I have the pivot fixtures for those too. You can buy all that from RLR. Hey, fun to drive, 2025, we're here, it's now, and you guys have fun and be safe. God bless.